Hi, this is Tom Needham. Welcome to Sounds. And today we are going to be talking with Emmy-winning director Matthew O'Neill. The Sounds of Film and the Sounds podcast is where we go to explore the intersection of culture, politics, and art. On today's episode, we delve into one of the most chilling and urgent stories of our time, cyber surveillance and the erosion of privacy in the digital age. As I mentioned, I'm joined by Matthew O'Neill, one of the masterminds behind the gripping new HBO documentary Surveilled. The film premiering on November 20th on Max follows Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Ronan Farrow as he uncovers the unsettling world of spyware, tools capable of taking over your phone without your knowledge. From the inner workings of NSO Group, the creators of the notorious Pegasus spyware, to the far-reaching human and ethical consequences of its use, Surveilled shines a light on the secretive and dangerous industry, reshaping global power and privacy. The film was a featured selection at Doc NYC. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on the Sounds of Film.
Tom, thanks for having us and for highlighting Surveilled. We agree that it's an urgent film right now, perhaps to use the overused term now more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those movies I really want to shine a light on. What originally drew you to the story of doing a movie about surveillance and Pegasus software?
So Perri Peltz and I are longtime partners and directors, and we created the series Axios on HBO and worked together for HBO and others. And the executive leadership team at HBO Documentaries, Lisa Heller and Nancy Abraham, brought us together with the indomitable reporter Ronan Farrow of The New Yorker and of Catch and Kill and of lots of different incredible investigative work to say, how about you all collaborate? What's something that is urgent and of the now and could use the treatment of a film, a robust documentary film to explore? And Ronan was on this story at the time. And as we discussed the possibilities, and Ronan began to open up his investigative world to me and Perri, we thought this would be an opportunity for an audience to get on the inside of an ongoing investigation into one of the more chilling privacy issues of our time.
It's a really interesting concept for a film. I don't know if this is something that's going to be more common, but as you mentioned, Ronan was already doing a piece, and it seems like maybe you kind of just picked up and followed him. Is that what happened exactly, or?
It's always more complicated, but in short, uh, what we did is joined forces with Ronan, who was doing his investigative work at the time primarily for the New Yorker, and then expanded it together to collaborate on creating a documentary that took that New Yorker investigation and went even further into what is happening in the world of cyber espionage and phone hacking.
This story is very alarming, as I already mentioned. Can you just give our listeners who haven't seen the film yet a little sense of what's going on right now? For instance, can you explain how people's phones can be hacked? They can be, hacked into. They can be listened to. Their messages can be read, and there's no signs of this event even occurring. It's pretty remarkable.
I think that for many of us, we understand that in terms of basic digital maintenance, you don't click on the link that you don't recognize, right? That's the way that the anonymous bad guys get into your world and steal your bank account information or any number of other terrible things. This focuses on really high end digital surveillance tools that are being developed by private companies and sold to governments, which is different. And it's a zero click software. So you may know not to click on the suspicious link, but you don't know that a missed call or a text message from a number you don't recognize could be the covert way in which someone is hacking your phone. And we look specifically with Ronan as we go from Israel to Spain to Washington, D.C., and to New York at the ways in which these sorts of digital hacks and cyber espionage can be used in democracies. These are tools that law enforcement might want, much along the lines of using a phone tap to tap your phone. But with this software, a government agency or another individual, depending, this software allows someone to go into your phone, download everything, your photos, your pictures, your calendars, your bank account information, and then disappear without a trace.
One of the things that's interesting in the film is that if people weren't imagining this already, you found that some of the people who are having this done to their phones are activists and journalists themselves. Why are these two groups being targeted?
So perhaps the most awful and sad case of where Pegasus has been implicated was in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi a number of years ago, the journalist for the Washington Post. And journalists, activists can be considered by some governments to be either legitimate targets of an investigation or, in some cases, breaking the law. The largest civil society hack of phones, which is what we look at in this case, was uncovered in Spain. Spain is a democracy, right? It's not a place we might expect governments to be intrusive into civil society with spying and phone hacking in Russia or China or countries that we consider autocracies. Spain is a democracy, an ally of the United States, and a place where, in this case, regular citizens with, in some cases, no political connections besides perhaps a family member who was involved in some of the political turmoil in Spain, being hacked with this Pegasus software. So you had not only citizens, journalists, activists, but also real total civilians, doctors in some cases.
And can you, maybe it's obvious, but why do you think different groups would want to get into these types of people's phones? How is this information going to be used?
Well, it's easy to speculate on all of the potential uses and abuses. And as we think about this spyware and its potential, there's a potential for great harm. There's also a potential for investigative goodness, things where the quote bad guys could be stopped, right? As Congressman Chris Hines points out in the film, if someone's children were kidnapped, we would want law enforcement to have every tool at their disposal to hack the phones of the culprits in that case. It's just that when dissent, protest, and other forms of civil society's action are considered potentially criminal, that these tools can be abused by governments. And that's the line we're walking and what we have to figure out as a society, because this technology exists. It's not going away. As Ambassador Nathaniel Fick says in the film, like, you can't put the tech genie back in the bottle. This is going to shape our lives, and the potential for surveillance is something we all have to be aware of.
One of the other disturbing facts I learned in your movie was that if somebody is targeted to have their phone hacked, it's also very likely that their family is as well. Why would they be going after the family as well, do you think?
Uh, Again, the speculation on the part of what law enforcement might be thinking, but they're trying to track all the details of what they consider worthy of investigation. And so they go deeper. In the case that you're talking about in the film, the parents of a civil society activist had both their phones hacked, and the sister had her phone hacked. And you see how, as an investigative group uses this spyware to try to learn information, they wind up with access to so many citizens' private information. The mother in this case is a doctor. They don't know, but in theory, the whoever hacked her phone could have access to all of the photos and medical information of her patients that she's using her phone to communicate about. So
Man.
the vulnerabilities as these tools become available to government agencies are really, really serious. And when you think about how these tools might be used, they can be used by high level organizations at the federal level, like the CIA or the FBI. But what about when these tools are in the hands of local police forces? What are those implications for civil society, but also for run of the mill investigations into much lesser crimes?
As you mentioned, the genie is out of the bottle. Um, do you have any thoughts as to what needs to be done? I mean, we can't just say, "Oh, that's the way it is," and you have to just assume now that your pictures and your messages and your camera is always on. I mean, that's just a terrible way to live. Um, um, what can we do?
Well, first and foremost, there's a sort of simple tool that we should all, for digital maintenance, do every day, which is turn off your phone and reboot it. Often, that is a way not only for these more sophisticated spywares, but to give your phone a reset and make sure that the protections that the various operators, whether it's your apps like WhatsApp or Twitter or anything like that, you can get those protections to come back in, and the operating systems reboot and will give you the most up-to-date protection. Because at this particular point, the protection comes from the companies that run the operating systems of our phones and the apps that we use on our phones. It's a cat and mouse game between these private companies that are innovators in the spyware space and the private companies that are innovators in the sort of use space for mobile devices and mobile technology. And larger than that, we need to be aware and put pressure on our legislators to make sure that the surveillance state that is possible is not implemented with impunity. And the same way there are checks and balances on a law enforcement agency's use of investigative tools like tapping a phone, there need to be checks and balances and transparency in how these tools may be used. It would be naive to just say, let's ban the tools, because the tools exist, and once something exists, it's very hard to make it disappear. However, regulation, attention, and a system of checks and balances on these tools in liberal democracies and in the way we confront and deal with the private companies making these tools is very, very important.
I have to say, the film raises a lot of important issues, but it's also just a very cool movie. Um, Ronan is a fantastic journalist, but he has a great presence on the screen, and this thing is shot like a spy thriller. Tell me a little bit about the filmmaking, how you take a pretty serious topic and make it dramatic for audiences.
Well, Perri Peltz and I were thinking that what's most important in terms of bringing the audience in, obviously the ideas matter and the information that's communicated, but if they could feel like they're sitting in the seat next to Ronan as he's on his investigative journey, they can experience with him the discoveries he makes along the way. That's what's exciting about the film, is you're in there with one of the most well-known investigative journalists really in the world right now, as he is hot on the case trying to figure out the ways in which spyware are being used globally, but also very specifically in democracies, and exposing what's happening in real time. So you, the audience, are with Ronan as he is visiting the headquarters of NSO Group in Tel Aviv, as he's at the Catalan Parliament in Barcelona, as he's in the capital in the United States talking to the legislators who are changing and shaping policy here. It's a front row seat to investigative journalism.
And it looks like a big Hollywood film because you're going to some pretty beautiful looking places and you have a fantastic score in the movie. Tell me about visually and musically how the music and just the visual places that you went to just added a little extra something to this film.
Well, the composer Mac Quayle, who you might recognize some of his style from the incredible series Mr. Robot, but Mac is an incredible composer that put
Yeah.
together a beautiful score for this film. And when you talk about the visual places, you're absolutely right. What's very funny is as we were filming in Barcelona in the Catalan parliament and we were working through all these permissions, the administrator said, well, this is the second time that HBO has shot in the Catalan parliament. And I'm thinking, well, why? Like, why would HBO be shooting in the Catalan parliament? This felt like a pretty obscure place, even for our documentary. And it turned out that scenes from Game of Thrones had been shot there as well.
Oh wow! Well, you've screened this and it's about to be streamed. What's the number one thing that you're hoping that audiences take away from this important movie?
Use this as a conversation starter. Our lives are not as private as we think, and we are more vulnerable. And talking about your desire for privacy, assuming you may have privacy, is really important. It's something to talk about with political leaders, it's something to talk about with your friends. Just that simple thing of turn your phone on and off once a day is such an easy way to protect yourself because this technology may be in the hands of government actors now, but if past is precedent, these sorts of zero-click softwares that can download all of the information on your device will make it into the hands of bad actors and ex-spouses and all sorts of people who you don't want to have access to your phone. And at the same time, hold the companies that are creating software for your phones accountable as well, because the innovators and programmers who are keeping pace in that cat and mouse game with the hackers are equally important and probably the front line of our defenses.
And Matthew, if anybody wants to learn more about your work or about this film in particular, Surveilled, where should they go?
First of all, go to HBO and look up either Perri Peltz or me, Matt O'Neill. You'll see a lot of the films that we've done with our friends at HBO, and it's a wonderful place to see our work. Or come on down to Chinatown in New York City, where we work at the Downtown Community Television Center. We have a screening room where we're screening documentaries all the time for the public, and also great public programs around education, because we believe that visual storytelling is a way to broaden the engagement of our society. And you can find out all about that at dctvny.org.
Matthew, thank you so much.
Tom, thanks for this show. Really pleased with our conversation and glad to participate.
All right, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
Thanks
Tom,
again.
was that what,
Yeah, that's
was that
exactly.
what you did?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to have you on anytime to talk about any of your other movies. So feel free to reach out anytime you want. Open invitation.
Perfect, Tom. If you don't mind, shoot me an email so I have your contact information directly. It's matthew@dctvny.org. And then
I can put you guys in touch if that's easier.
Even better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you so much, Tom. That was
Thanks,
great.
Tom.
Okay, take it easy. Bye-bye.